A special Good Evening Nebraska with 2 weeks until voters head to the poll. We're giving all three candidates on the ballot for Nebraska governor the chance to spend time with us about why they believe they should get the job.
In just a few moments, we'll welcome Democrat Carol Blood. On Monday, Libertarian Scott Zimmerman joined us, and you can see his full interview. It's posted on our website, nebraska.tv. Republican Jim Pillen has declined our invitation. So for the next 30 minutes, we're going to have a conversation about issues important to Nebraskans, and now we bring in Carol Blood.
Carol, thank you for being here. Let's start with getting to know you a little bit more. Tell us about where you're from.
Sure. Well, I was born in McCook, Nebraska, raised on a farm outside of Hastings, Nebraska. We still have a family farm in Clay Center, but I raised my own family in Sarpy County, 3 adult children, 10 awesome grandchildren, and we have been there for quite a while, and that's where we call home now.
If you're elected governor, what would your top priorities be?
So I am running on 4 key issues, and those key issues are education, infrastructure, that I believe everybody has the right to feel safe and be well, and prosperity for all. I forgot my 4th one there for a minute, and prosperity for all. And so I'm guessing that as you ask questions tonight, we're going to actually end up tapping each of those key issues, because we know that the prosperity for all is really going to encompass everything that we choose to do when we move Nebraska forward to be a more successful state.
Let's start with one of the most important topics in this state, and that is property taxes.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to not pay as much money to the government whenever possible. This is probably the biggest issue right now for a lot of people, especially because so many own land out here. How do we address property tax?
Well, God bless you, because you just got prosperity for all, which is my first key issue. It's the big lie about property taxes. We have known since Ben Nelson was governor that unfunded, underfunded mandates and not fully funding our schools is the underlying cause of why our property taxes are high. But yet what we do is we keep kicking the can down the road, and we're literally playing shell games with your tax dollars. And so a really good example is this year I had a constitutional amendment in the legislature, because I am currently serving in the legislature, that said to voters, should we pass any laws without showing how we can pay for them? And it was on the agenda, and in the second round, our speaker purposely adjourned before we could vote on it. And so it tells me after this year that I really don't think my peers want to give you real property tax relief, because goodness, what will they run on every 2 years? So we know the underlying cause. We have to stop these unfunded, underfunded mandates that create burdens on our political subdivisions, like our counties, our municipalities, our schools, and that includes law enforcement, by the way. Until we stop that, you will never have real property tax relief. You hear people saying we must cap local government. They're already capped. That's just more platitudes. That's not real. They'll say, well, they need to tighten their budgets. Well, look over the budgets of your political subdivisions. There's actually quite tight budgets. The people causing your high property taxes are the people that are in Lincoln. And until we fix that, you will never have real property tax relief.
There's been a recent push to absorb the Department of Education into the umbrella of state offices that report to the governor. Do you think the department should report to the governor, and what should state lawmakers' role be in K-12 education?
No, they should not report to the governor, because I think that that's an opportunity to make things more partisan and actually less transparent. I think it's really important that voters understand what's going on and who should be held responsible. So when it comes to education, that's actually one of my key issues as well. I believe in a PK through 14 education. I think we are long past due. We can do universal child care with what we have in our coffers right now, which is also a way for us to help keep our young families and slow down rural depopulation in this area, because there's really not a lot of good effective child care we're living right now. We're in the space we're in right now. But it's also an opportunity for us to catch red flags, cycles of poverty, cycles of violence, that we can help those families before those children get into school. The 14 education, we have put tens of millions of dollars into our community colleges. We can allow our high school seniors to get up to a 2-year degree, 6-month certification, 1-year degree in things like agriculture, IT, healthcare, insurance. There are so many things that they can do in a community college and then leave that educational system, because we'll be doing a public-private partnership, which we're already doing in small pockets but not comprehensively. Then they'll be able to leave and get into the workforce with a good paying job, with benefits and retirement. Remember retirement, when you used to not have to live on Social Security? We got to make sure that the next generation has that. And then not having that burden of college debt. So we've been able to do this for a very long time. We just haven't tapped into it, which is kind of crazy when you invest tens of millions of dollars in something like that. So easy solution that doesn't require tax dollars because it already exists. And if you do it through a public-private partnership, that covers any additional costs that might happen in the process.
You've mentioned your ties to central and western Nebraska already.
Yeah.
The term is out of state. How do we make sure Lincoln and Omaha do not get to make all the decisions and that the rest of us are taken care of?
You know, here's where I really like to tell people at our town halls when we're out west is that the way that people win statewide races is what happens in this area. And people keep voting for more of the same and then wonder why nothing ever changes. It's really time to vote for new blood in Nebraska so you can have some change. Because what happens is ultimately there are more people from the eastern part of the state than there are from the western part of the state. It's a fact, and it's based on population. If we want to continue to make sure that the voices in this area are heard, you have to start electing leadership that doesn't forget that every time they get to Lincoln. Because that's what we've seen happen over and over and over again. And so it starts at the executive branch, which is your governor, to make sure that your voices are consistently heard. And one of the things we're going to do that I talk about at my town halls is we're going to do a strategic plan. We're going to travel all over the state of Nebraska. And we're going to go to communities when working folks can actually attend the meetings. And we're going to say, what are your top 3 priorities? Is it infrastructure that includes broadband and bridges or technology? Is it access to mental health or access to better health care? What do you need in your communities? And each community will dwindle it down to 3 things. Then we'll take that back to the state of Nebraska, put together an overall comprehensive strategic plan, and make sure that your voices and priorities in this part of the state are heard and addressed. And then we'll mirror our budget to match that plan. Because right now, this is how we budget. We cut, and tell you that we're saving you tax dollars, and then we let things fester and we throw millions of dollars at it later, ultimately screwing over the taxpayers in the long run. So we're going to make sure that we have a plan, that your voices are heard, that we bring everybody to the table, and then year after year, we're going to report back to you and tell you how successful we have been, if we've been successful at all. If we haven't, why not? And since it's a living, breathing document, we will tweak it to make sure that we are successful. But again, most importantly, your voices are going to be heard in that plan, which is something we don't do right now.
We're back with Democratic nominee Carol Blood running for the seat of governor in Nebraska. NTV offered a debate format to each candidate appearing on the ballot. Libertarian candidate Scott Zimmerman, yourself, were both in favor of participating. Jim Pillen, the Republican primary winner, was not. He also declined our invitation to debate during the GOP primary. So, Carol, what is your stance on the importance of a debate?
I think that we are applying for a job, and it is part of us applying for a job. It's something that we're being told is political theater by his handlers, but I think it's the opposite. I think that it's important that voters get to see us side by side, because then you can compare and contrast. But more importantly, if we are asking somebody to lead our state, we need to know that they can think on their feet. And what we're seeing now is a very elitist attitude. He picks which resources he will talk to, which media sources he will talk to. He has only invite one-party only events. So if he were to be elected, is he going to represent all of Nebraska or just one party? Is he going to talk to all of the media or just who he likes? And I don't think that that's good leadership. And I do think it's a slap in the face of democracy. I think it is an expectation that we should debate and that we can show that we can think on our feet, much in arenas like this where we don't know what the questions are going to be. But also, I think it's just a generosity that you have to give. We have to campaign across the state. That's what we keep hearing is the excuse, right? Well, it's our strategy, and we're going eyeball to eyeball and campaigning across the street, across the state. But who isn't? That's part of being a candidate. You gotta go and you gotta campaign. We're out knocking on doors. We're making calls. We have canvassed over 400,000 people as of today, and we've been doing that since last September. And debate was part of our strategy too, but we're not allowed to debate because he's choosing not to, and that's kind of ridiculous. But I have participated in forums with Mr. Zimmerman because he understands the importance of debate as well. So yeah, I think it's ridiculous, I think it's elitist, and I think it's an insult to Nebraska voters.
We're going to switch gears and talk about how Nebraska has consistently reported the lowest unemployment rate in the country, but with it, it's like a blessing and a curse comes labor shortages. What will you do to attract new workers to the state and keep existing ones, especially in rural areas?
Well, you guys are a bit younger than me, so I'm going to tell you something that 25 years ago, the media told us that we were going to have a workforce shortage, that baby boomers were going to be aging out, and that municipalities and counties and states and the federal government needed to be aware of this problem. So I go back to Nebraska. What did Nebraska do about it? Nothing. Did we plan for the future? No. We waited for it to fester, and now we're throwing millions of dollars at the problem. So what we need to do is we need to take action immediately. Remember how we talked about the K through 14 education? That's part of that puzzle, making sure that our high school seniors have the skills that they need to have good jobs. But more importantly, we've had a lot of professionals that went ahead and retired early during the pandemic that we are not tapping into. And we need to try and bring them back into the workforce. What we shouldn't be doing is we're doing geofencing right now in other states, and we aren't doing good metrics on that geofencing, again, spending taxpayer dollars to try and recruit people from other states to come to our state without any real reason behind it, except that if we blast it out enough, we hope someone will move here. So we have to make sure that we also start working with our students at a younger age to help them get involved in things like IT or the trades or agriculture, to help motivate them to go from school to those positions. A lot of them they can learn in school because of these public-private partnerships that we want to do and we are currently doing. But we should also work on Grow Where You Are programs. We know with the healthcare industry especially, say that you are a receptionist or you are part of housekeeping, you're already integrated into that community. We need to start recruiting people within those sectors to take the next step. And we have started doing that. We have put a lot of funds, especially in K-State and other arenas across Nebraska where we're growing the opportunities for people to get trained in a timely fashion in areas like healthcare. So we are on the pathway to something better. But we need to plan, and we need to figure out how we're going to pull out of this, because quite frankly, we're a low population state. There's no overnight solution, and it's really unfortunate that when we knew 25 years ago that this was going to be a problem, we didn't figure out how we were going to address it instead of spending tens of millions of dollars of your tax money to try and fix it now. So it comes with education, it comes with some flexibility within that education, it comes with Grow Your Own, as I just said, and it also comes with bringing back people who have retired out of different arenas back into the workforce. And quite frankly, with the rural depopulation, if we work on things like childcare, if we have good paying jobs, and we have affordable housing for our 18 to 34-year-olds that are going to drive this economy, we're going to be able to keep them on the farm, right? Keep them back home. And we also have to start looking at technology. We talk about the workforce shortage. It doesn't mean just bodies. It also means technology. We know that AI, artificial intelligence, robots, cobots, and blockchain technology will not only help our ag community, but our healthcare industry, our Department of Transportation. It helps us at government as well. That we can utilize that, not to take someone else's job, but to fill those arenas, to fill those spots where we don't have people to work. Also, if we want to keep young people on these generational farms, we have to address issues like climate change. Whether you agree that there's climate change or not, we know that the seasons are changing to the detriment of our farmers. Like, look at the drought that we're experiencing right now. We've had flood the previous year. We need to be boots on the ground. We need to have a plan, and part of that plan has to be technology, and that has to do with our workforce. So again, we talked about my key issues. So you notice that the more I talk, how everything's kind of connected. We have to start investing in things that make a difference, not just today, but 10 years from now. We can't keep waiting for things to fester, and we have to stop making Nebraskans collateral damage as a result of our bad decisions.
A few minutes left with Carol Blood. Let's dive into this topic real quick.
Yeah.
You mentioned the farms, the generational farms. Agriculture is huge in this part of the state.
Sure, ag drives
How
the
do
economy.
we make sure that it stays huge with the drought that we're experiencing, with the wildfires we had to go through? How do we find some solutions to the climate that we're dealing with this time?
So we talked a little bit about AI and blockchain because we know that that can be beneficial to our ag community. We know that ag drives our economy, but what I think is really curious is that when we have things like drought, when we have things like flood, what we hear at the executive branch is, well, you know, they go through this all the time, they know how to handle it. We need to be boots on the ground. We need to be here providing resources, talking to you about how we can help. I thought it was really interesting, the fires in Lancaster County just a day or two ago. If you looked through people's social media, it was like nobody noticed anything was going on at the executive branch. It was kind of crazy, where we went ahead and posted, like, we have places that you can take your animals, and here's where you can get help from the Red Cross, and we provided resources. We need to make sure that we protect ag, but more importantly, when these things happen, that we have a plan, like a real plan. And again, you don't have to agree that there's climate change, but you can't disagree if you're a farmer or a rancher in Nebraska that our weather is wonky right now, and it's tough on our rural areas. So we have to have a plan, we have to implement that plan, and gosh darn it, our executive branch needs to be boots on the ground with help when these things happen.
I want to talk about the state's cash reserve. It's expected to hit a record high $1.3 billion by June of next year. So what would your plan be for that money?
So I'm going to give you a warning right now on that plan because a lot of that money is federal money. So this is not going to be the norm for Nebraska. And so if we start taking that money and acting like we're an ATM, we're going to be in big trouble in about a year. We have a lot of things we have to resolve, like school funding. We have a lot of things we have to resolve, like mental health and access to health care, that if we start becoming the ATM that we were when we got the ARPA funds, we're going to be in deep trouble in a year. And so for me, I don't have my radar on those funds because I understand where they came from and what's going to happen a year from now.
Speaking of money, Governor Ricketts wanted to spend around $500 million to build a canal out in Colorado. What are your thoughts?
So I made my thoughts very clear on the day of debate in the legislature. I did support it because water is life in Nebraska, and we know that any access to water can be beneficial to our farmers and our ranchers. However, here's my concern. We picked a fight with our neighbor. We didn't even try and negotiate with Colorado in any way, which is kind of Hatfields and McCoys. And we also have not taken into, or maybe we did, but if you look, we are involved in a bunch of federal compacts, and we're going to end up going to court for a very long time. I'm guessing at least 8 to 10 years based on the research that I did. And so do I think that it's important that we have access to water? Yes. But how we're doing it is not very smart. And so we just put, I think, what, 15 million into it for the research? That's a lot of money. And if we were to take that 15 million and maybe work on our climate change and the technology that is involved with that and help our young farmers, or we were to take that 15 million to create better access to health care, I mean, that might be a better investment than fighting in courts, and it's going to cost taxpayers tens of millions of dollars to fight in court. So I'm just concerned because Colorado's been good stewards with our water. They haven't made any threats to us, but yet we're going to now claim war. And I do take issue with that. Did I vote for it? I did vote for it in the legislature, but I made sure that those comments were on record because I hate to be the person that said I told you so, but we're going to go to court.
I want to really touch quickly on your stand on abortion.
Okay. I think that we're at a good point here in Nebraska where we have laws that protect the unborn, but also laws that allow doctors to do their jobs, because what happens ultimately between an OBGYN, epidemiologist, a family practitioner, and that patient should be between them. Politicians don't belong in the doctor's office. The last trigger bill was a bridge too far. It would have stopped things like IVF. It would have eliminated certain types of birth control. I don't think people want to live in a police state. That's what these bills have been shown to do. You shouldn't be worried when you're a physician, and we're not talking about abortionists. We're talking about physicians that are providing health care. You shouldn't have to look over your shoulder waiting to see if somebody's going to snitch you off or maybe making a decision that they thought was the wrong decision, and then having to go and defend yourself in court and potentially serve up to 20 years in prison if you can't prove that it was medically necessary.
You've got 5 seconds. Where can we find your information?
electcarolblood.com. You can also launch to all of my social media on our website. Please take time to look at our videos and our media contacts that we've had posted there.
And you're on TikTok.
I am on TikTok.
Facebook, Twitter, Instagram.
and whatever else the fourth one
Pinterest.
is. Yeah.
Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.